Professor Dr. Qayyum Hussain, Director SIKIMS, Dr. Parvez Ahmed Kol, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara, Faculty, Royal Globe University, Guwahati, Ritu Garola Khanduri, Registrars, Dean Academic Affairs, Deans of various schools of Cluster University Srinagar, Principals, Nodal Principal, Kashmir Division Colleges, Controller Examination, Faculty, participants, and dear students, a very good morning to all of you. I extend my gratitude and welcome to our Honorable Chief Guest, Shri Rajiv Rai Bhatnagar ji. Sir, we are highly honored to have you here with us today. Under your dynamic guidance, we achieved so many milestones. Your expertise as an administrative officer has proved a blessing for higher education department, and your contribution to bureaucracy is legendary. Your encouragement and support in all endeavors has been fundamental to the progress and development of higher education. I formally welcome our dynamic Honorable Vice Chancellor, Cluster University Srinagar, Professor Dr. Qayyum Hussain, who is also the chief patron for the conference and under whose leadership Cluster University Srinagar is touching new heights one after the other. Sir, your vision and guidance has given a sound direction to our mottos. We are honored to have you with us today. I take extreme pride in welcoming our guest of honor, Professor Dr. Parvez Kol, Professor and Head, Department of Internal and Pulmonary Medicines, and presently Director Sikkim Sora Srinagar. Besides this, he is a well-known researcher in his field and is associated with various reputed journals and also the editor-in-chief. I also feel honored to welcome all the dignitaries. Dr. Rashmi Singh, Commissioner, State Taxes Department, UT of J&K, Director, Finance, dignitaries from Sikkim Sora Srinagar, and other directors as well. I also take this opportunity to welcome registrars, Dean Academic Affairs, Deans, Nodal Principal, Controller, Principals, Principal colleagues, coordinators, participants, guests, faculty from various colleges, and students. We are honored to have so many eminent scholars of international repute with us today in this conference and in this college also that has a legacy and history associated with it. And we are proud to exhibit our prowess to our honored guests. Situated in the heart of Srinagar city, Government College for Women, MA Road, Srinagar, is a premier institution of higher learning for women of Jammu and Kashmir. Established in the year 1950, the college has a glorious past with excellent academic track record. The college has played a pivotal role in women education and women empowerment in the state. It has an exemplary past serving as harbinger for women emancipation and women empowerment. The college is the manifestation of a vision marked by academic excellence and manifests the motto of light to enlighten. With more than 5,000 students from all walks of life and all corners of the valley, 200 plus staff, 33 departments, more than 100 faculty, the college is an interesting hub of academic activity through the year. It provides a platform to Kashmiri women to showcase their talent, dedication, and hard work and move forward in life. It is the mission of the college to encourage Kashmiri women to foster knowledge and contribute to the good of the society. The college promotes learning, creativity, social and professional responsibility, and growth. To these ends, the college challenges its students to think critically and instinctively to overcome obstacles and break the glass ceiling. The college has served as a premier institute for the removal of gender stereotypes at the institutional level. But gender concerns are many, ranging from crises over gender identity, gender stereotyping, gender segregated roles, gender inequality, gender wage gap, and the like. These issues need redressal at the global level, though we know that so much has changed, yet so much has stayed the same. And that is precisely what brings us here today. Though various commissions and various policies have been framed by the government and various programs are being organized to generate awareness and empower our youth to tackle to the pressures and problems that they encounter at the professional as well as at the personal level due to gender bias. Today's conference is yet another step to remove taboos associated with genders, and I hope the deliberations will prove very helpful in gender upliftment and will further pave way for attitudinal changes and equality of genders. I once again wholeheartedly welcome you all and wish this conference a successful one. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an extensive and exhaustive welcome address. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shabnam Ara, Dean Student Welfare, Cluster University, Srinagar, and convener of this conference, for providing a brief overview of the conference. Shabnam Ara.
Thank you, Professor Shahnawaz. His Honor, Shri Rajiv Rai Bhatnagar, IPS, Advisor to Honorable Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Honorable Professor Qayyum Hussain, Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Srinagar, Kashmir, Revered Professor Dr. Parvez Ahmed Kaul, Director, Skim Saura, Kashmir, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara, Keynote Speaker for the occasion, Professor Ritu Gairola Khanduri, another keynote speaker from Texas University, USA, who has joined us through online mode. Our own Professor Ruhi Jankant, Principal of the host college, my senior colleagues, dignitaries from across the globe, resource persons, social scientists, experts on gender sensitization, paper presenters, participants, and dear students. Assalamu alaikum and a pleasant morning to all. It's with great pleasure and honor that I stand before you today as the convener of this conference on gender sensitization, rights policies, and issues. On behalf of Cluster University, Srinagar, Kashmir, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you who have gathered here to contribute to this important dialogue. Gender sensitization is not merely a concept, it's a crucial aspect to build a just and equitable society. Today, we have assembled here with a shared commitment to address, discuss, and understand the multifaceted challenges faced by individuals across the gender spectrum. Our aim is to create a social environment that promotes equality, respect, and inclusivity for all. This conference serves as a platform to shed light on the fundamental rights that every individual deserves, regardless of their gender equality, inequality. It's an opportunity to critically analyze and assess the existing policies and frameworks in place, and also explore the ways to strengthen them further. By dwelling into the critical issues faced by marginalized communities, we hope to identify gaps, propose innovative solutions, and pave the way for positive change. I encourage all the participants to actively engage in the sessions, workshops, and discussions which will take place during the span of this conference. This is an opportunity to exchange ideas, challenge the existing perspectives, and develop a collective understanding of how we can work together to make an inclusive society and justice for both the genders, either male or female. Cluster University, Srinagar, Kashmir takes immense pride in organizing this conference as it aligns with our commitment of nurturing a social environment that values diversity and upholds the principles of equality. We firmly believe that by sensitizing ourselves, first ourselves and others, to the inequalities, injustice faced by different genders, and we can foster this across the spectrum. Let's embrace this conference as an opportunity for dialogue, learning, and collaboration. Together, let's strive for a future where every person, regardless of their gender, can live with dignity and respect for all, free from discrimination and equipped with the tools to achieve their aspirations, whether men or women. And it's only female and male, men and women are created by society itself. Let's deconstruct in this conference. Thank you. Wish you all a successful and transformative conference.
Thank you, Madam, for contextualizing this conference and highlighting the thematic concerns of this conference as well. Now it's time to hear a word from those who have contributed immensely to the field of gender studies. First of all, we'll start with our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker for the inaugural, Dr. Ritu Gairola Khandori, is the Associate Professor of Anthropology working at the University of Texas at Arlington, Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Madam is joining us through the online mode. Professor Ritu has edited many books and has also authored Caricaturing Culture in India, Cartoons and History in the Modern World. I request Madam to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, ma'am.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Unmute button.
Rahiji?
Over to the technical team. Ma'am is not getting the audio. Please help her. Professor Rashid.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes, but my PowerPoint I'm not able to share.
No.
Permission.
Okay. You can start with your introduction. In the meantime, we'll give the privilege so that you can upload your PPT live. Please go on.
I'll start my talk without the PowerPoint, and when we get the connection, we can always resume that. Someone just tell me whether the sound is getting through now.
You're audible. You are perfectly audible, ma'am.
Thank you. Esteemed Vice Chancellor, Deans, faculty, students of the Cluster University, I'm honored and humbled by your invitation to be the keynote speaker of your international conference, Gender Sensitization, Policies, Rights, and Issues. My talk today is titled Gender Diverse Sensitization, Dialogues and Strategies. Thank you for a very generous introduction in which you noted that I am a cultural anthropologist. So my talk today embraces the cultural anthropological perspective on gender sensitization. I have two starting points to springboard my talk and contribute to the conference discussion. First, cultural anthropology shows us that gender, like any category of identity, is a cultural construction. By that, one proceeds with the understanding there are commonsensical answers to questions such as what is gender? How do we assign attributes or characteristics to gender? All this process of assignment is a construction. It is arbitrary. We know so because when we take a historical view of our cultural notions of gender and gendered ways, we know how different we are today. Our perspective and conception of gender has changed over time. In addition to this temporal axis, we also know gender is a construction through a spatial perspective, because when we take a comparative perspective and look out of our own cultural milieus, we see a variety of gender practices and beliefs. Because it is a construction and arbitrary, however, does not make gender unreal. Gender is very much our lived reality. We also know that we can be socially reluctant to entertain any debate on gender or consider non-binary genders. That's the power of culture. It's a double-edged sword. It makes these concepts seem unmovable. In fact, there may be a fear that such thinking or rethinking about gender is detrimental to the preservation of our culture. But those who study cultures, as anthropologists do, know that cultures change. What we are today, our cultural selves, will look very different from the tomorrow that future generations will inhabit. The tension we grapple with is, on the one hand, gender as a category is a fiction, and on the other hand, it is a lived reality. It is our everyday life. People's experiences at home, at work, the opportunities they receive, the rights they have, the risks to their personal safety, and the potential for experiencing violence, all these are determined and lived through this arbitrary category. This lived reality must be acknowledged as much as we acknowledge the concept as a cultural construction. So gender sensitization can be that intervention that cuts through this tension, the pull and push of gender as arbitrary and gender as lived reality. My second point is one of the key words in this conference theme, that is policy. Cultural anthropologists have studied policy. Who produces policy? From an anthropological perspective, it is us, people, who produce policy. Here I'm drawing upon the anthropologist Winifred Tate's review on this subject. Bureaucrats, administrators produce policy. Policies shape the structure, distribution of resources, opportunities in a society. Policies are like the veins in our body. Through these veins, our resources flow towards identified problems, towards issues that need to be addressed. According to Tate, policymakers, and I quote Tate here, policymakers, political scientists, and journalists frequently present policy as a concrete, linear process in which the responsible authorities identify an existing problem and design a proposal to address the issue. In this view, policy is responsive, diagnostic, and a blueprint for governance. In contrast, anthropologists argue that policy is a generative realm of cultural production, producing and shaped by values, norms, identities, and practices. Policy making does not diagnose, but rather produces problems to be solved through policy. So as you can see, it's a critical take on how we talk about policy, how we think about policy and produce it. Policy written as neutral and universal guidelines reproduces hierarchies of value through implementation. The underlying question is whether this entire process, what does it do to the existing social structure and the hierarchies that are within it? Does it reproduce it, or does policy subvert it in any way? Thus, when anthropologists study policy, one of the things they observe is the gap between the ground reality and what the policymakers implement or think about this ground reality. The gap surfaces because people are not the part of the solution policies address. So an anthropological perspective on policy promotes listening and incorporating people as collaborators and partners in finding both the problems and the solutions. When policy on gender sensitizing builds on the anthropological perspective, then it produces a grounds up view of both the issues that confront people and the solutions that are generated by a collaborative process in which all stakeholders listen and learn. Policy making on gender sensitization would be a collaborative exercise of dialogue, analysis, and solution finding in which all at the table are also accorded equal status. Collaboration requires equality. When framing gender sensitizing measures, we could imagine our bureaucrats, policymakers, people, and anthropologists all at the same table. Now, I did have some PowerPoint slides to help us imagine what the table would look like, as well as these concepts, but let me do the best I can with just a verbal presentation. Oh, I got a message to share the PowerPoint, so I'm going to do that now. This is my second slide of the presentation. So after the abstract category of gender and then policy, I'm moving on to the point about, well, how can we really approach both these issues? So such gender sensitization brainstorming would lead us to an intersectional analysis. We are in the midst of illustrious social scientists at this conference. The panels and the technical sessions today and tomorrow will add much to help us think more about intersectionality. So I will be brief here. The US legal expert Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality in 1989. How is intersectionality useful for gender sensitization? Crenshaw made two important observations when she recently, and this was almost 3 decades later, when she recently revisited and discussed this path-breaking concept, which she applied again to the US context. But it is helpful for all of us, no matter where we are. Crenshaw noted, first, and I quote her here, we tend to talk about race, inequality as separate from inequality based on gender, class, sexuality, or immigrant status. What's missing is how, and I emphasize, some people are subject to all these, and the experience is not just the sum of its parts. Building on this, we can consider that when we educate and train on gender sensitization, we recognize and emphasize this simultaneous axis, this social dynamic on which gender diverse identities are played out. How precisely this plays out will vary in social contexts. In the US, Crenshaw identifies gender at the intersection of racism, sexism, classism, xenophobia, heterosexism, ableism, and so on. We can keep adding more. The idea again is not to add them up, but to see how each intensifies the discrimination and the potential for violence. How all these disadvantages or points of violence just don't simply add up. They multiply the disadvantage and the violence that it opens up individuals to. In the context of India or any other national context, we can rework this diagram to tell the story of how individuals, especially gendered individuals, and how gender is at the intersection of a complex social dynamic. Crenshaw's second point deserves our special attention. And I quote her here, being able to attend to not just unfair exclusion, but also, frankly, unearned inclusion is part of the equality gambit. We've got to be open to looking at all the ways our systems reproduce these inequalities. And that includes the privileges as well as the harms. So what do we take away from Crenshaw's second point? It is this, that we engage with people. When we dialogue, we can engage in expanding our understanding of the constructed nature of gender and the attributes associated with it, and how these attributes are normalized as gender specific. When we dialogue, we have to listen for not just the harms experienced by the intersection of disadvantages, but those who are at the intersection of advantages. They should also be willing to speak of their gender privilege. Now that's a difficult task to do, but that's exactly what Crenshaw is recommending and expecting of us if we are truly committed to gender sensitive equality and parity at workplace and even beyond the workplace at home. At a women's leadership workshop offered by Professor Diana Villimoria, I was struck by the suggestion that when women and all those disadvantaged by their non-binary gender keep accumulating disadvantage, be it in the form of low wages, denied opportunities for professional development, and other slights over the course of their career, they accrue a cultural disadvantage similar to how one accrues debt. It is the opposite for those with gender normative advantage. They accrue cultural credit, they enjoy the fruits of cultural capital and accrue credit. Now in this concluding section, I turn to the research of two experts who have studied gender and violence. Professor Diana Shandy, Provost at Augustana College, and Professor Gabriela Torres, Associate Provost at Wheaton College. Professors Shandy and Wheaton have played key roles in shaping the American Anthropological Association's policy on the prevention of sexual violence and prevention of sexual assault. They ask for professional associations and organizations that includes colleges, universities, or any organization to approach sexual violence as a type of professional misconduct. They make a very important connection between our organization's tolerance for sexism in its everyday form and the more spectacular talked about sexual violence, which is then reported in the newspapers. In other words, what we sometimes dismiss as a joke or as trivial sexist comments, these are just part and parcel of the larger issue that kind of bubbles up and is more visible. So what the two scholars are asking for us is to be equally attentive to this everyday sexism as much as we attend to the larger cases that are reported in the newspapers that go to court. I'll get back to both these scholars and what they have to say here. To quote, sexist forms of harassment and their everyday tolerance must be understood as the quotidian social supports for the more spectacular forms of sexual violence that garner public outrage and have recently compelled action, quotes close. Chandy and Torres recommend leveraging policies in professional associations and our home institutions by acknowledging the power that accountability and normative expectations play in institutional and cultural change. Understanding sexual violence as professional misconduct emphasizes the element of community harm, but does not deny that there are interpersonal harms. To wrap up, I began with introducing gender as an arbitrary concept, as a construct, but also acknowledge that it is part of our lived reality and how an anthropological perspective on gender sensitization can help us resolve this tension and in a way invite members of the community. All of us are social beings, we are social individuals, we are very deeply tied and committed to our notions of culture. This kind of dialogue, sitting at the table together, can not only help us rethink our taken for granted ideas about gender, but it can also impact the ways policy is generated, is designed, and the very act of thinking about policy, the purpose of policy, that too gets a new orientation and a new way of thinking about how policy serves people or does not serve people. Finally, in drawing upon Professor Chandy and Torres's work, I introduced this idea that sexism and sexual violence, no matter what degree it is enacted in, no matter what scale it is enacted in, these are entwined parts of the same story. And if in our workplaces, in our institutions, in our professional organizations, if we build a culture where such attitudes against gendered identities, violence against gendered identities, opportunities denied due to gender identities, if these are treated as professional misconduct, where individuals who perpetrate this kind of behavior are held accountable on a professional platform, then we can possibly see a higher degree of accountability and the beginning of change in the way of thinking about these practices and the implications of this kind of behavior or attitude towards gender. Thank you.
You have also emphasized the need for the cultural inclusion of different gender identities. Thank you for that as well. Now, I would like to call on this worthy Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara for the special address. Professor Brara is currently teaching postgraduate courses in Royal Global University, Guwahati. Professor Brara has worked and researched primarily in the sphere of cultural anthropology and sociology of gender. She was awarded her doctorate from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Her research work was later published by Oxford University Press. She has written reports for GIZ, NCW, IGNCA, Ministry of Panchayat, and ISS. She has also worked in remote villages in building people-centric institutions as gender and NGO coordinator in NARCORM and IFAD, NEC, and Donor Project. I request you, madam, to please proceed to the podium for the special address.
The podium was not built for me. Good morning, Adab, Sabko, the dignitaries sitting on the dais, the dignitaries of the dais, and the dear students. We had a very wonderful lecture by Ritu just now on talking about the gender, sensitization. I would like to take you into the, journey into this whole paradigm of feminism. I'm a sociologist, so, that's my task. And so today I'll be talking on feminism. And I would like to, by the end of my talk, I would like to take you into the realm of need to shift the paradigm of feminism today. Okay. So today, by the end of it, you will realize that feminism is an ideology. That's number one point. And like any other ideology, seeks for the believers. Whether you're male or female, you believe in an ideology, and feminism is one of the ideology. Therefore, it is essentially gender neutral. It's not that you are a woman, that's why you're a feminist, you're a man, you're not, it's nothing like that, so which we have been grappling for so many years now. Another important point to take home is that feminism is like waves, it's like waves moving from academic insights to social movements, seeking social justice and consequently redesigning and redefining feminism, back and forth impacting policies, law, and towards more conducive society. Now, this pedagogical process first uses the empirical realities and then produces knowledge which is an assumption, but has a veracity to be accepted universally. But there's always the issue of selected notions of reality. For a very long time, knowledge has been the epistemic reasoning of what men think. This kind of androcentric theories generate knowledge which ignores the experiences and perspectives of women and bring out images of women who are accepting, happy, and slated to be in the roles society expects them to be. The images of happy homemaker, naturally desiring to be a mother, ready to serve one and all, subservient, etc. All these characteristics is being naturally endowed on women as if it's a DNA. For a very long time, we have been ingrained with the binaries of men are from Mars and women are from Venus syndrome. Men are rational and women are emotional. Men are strong, women are weak, etc. Where are these fixed notions of binaries coming from? This kind of pedagogy needs to be challenged. And that is why feminist theories is a very strong affirmative in an attempt to bring out the complete understanding of social facts. So the time has come to deconstruct the system of patriarchy. Do you know that according to the World Happiness Report, world's top 3 happiest countries are led by women? Finland, Denmark, and Iceland. Katherine Johnson's name is well known only now after the movie Hidden Figures. I don't know how many have seen that on the Netflix. She's a Black woman who works in NASA and for a very long time faces discrimination racially and through gender. And finally, the NASA has to accept her contribution. And because of her calculations, a human satellite can actually land on Earth in a very, fixed and proper manner. The invention of the DNA double helix is credited to James Watson and Francis Crick, and they won a Nobel Prize for the name in 1962. But they are not the actual right persons to be appreciated. Rosalind Franklin, a British biophysicist, was the first person who captured the photograph of molecules using X-ray diffraction. Watson and Crick only stole the idea from her. Grace Hopper designed Howard's Mark I computer in 1955, but we consider Charles Babbage as the father of computer. Likewise, there have been so many women writers, novelists who use the masculine pen name in their writings because the society was not ready to accept women in literary criticisms. Of course, I can go on and on in the sense that, how the European, the whole kind of concept of witch burning, and then, of course, in our own, societies where there were poets, and there are still poets who are not allowed to use their names. They use pen name, which is masculine. These things are still going on in many, many areas and many, many countries even today. So we certainly have forgotten about the contributions made by the 15 women in making the Constitution of India. These women had endured adversaries. That time they were victims of child marriage, they were victims of widowhood, humiliations. But in spite of that, they sat and made our constitution and made it such a just and wonderful constitution, which we read today. And we have often forgotten the contribution of our women. So how many of us know, Dr. Rukmani Bai, first Indian doctor of the late 19th and early 20th century, who got married at the age of 11, but still managed to get herself educated, or Raini Gadalung of Manipur. She was just 13 when she started fighting against the British and the colonial forces. How many of us know about her? At the most, she says that, so Romila Thapar has bring about a very interesting concept. She says that historians did not think of women having history. And neither do the women need history. At the most, she says that they are the sub-themes. I would even call them footnotes. Therefore, these unwritten women were taken for granted as subordinate members of the society. Historically, therefore, women have never been counted as full-fledged members of the society. History themselves, therefore, are the anthology of only his stories, history, his stories, and not her stories. In my long journey of studying feminist ideologies, feminist movements, and feminist epistemologies, I've seen the whole gamut of it moving within the systems, primarily reformative. This means that we are only shifting spaces within the bubble of patriarchy. There is a need to break this bubble. And both men and women need to break out of it. Therefore, we need to critique established social structures and seek to change the very edifice of it. So let's say, for example, fight against dowry, right? But as long as there is hierarchical system where the wife givers remain lower to the wife takers, even if the dowry is not taken, the societal expectation will remain as that of subjugation. A structural change in this will involve deconstructing the system of marriage as it has been evolved. This is just one example. We can take examples from political structures, economic structures, traditions, and the like. And if you reflect and interrogate, all of these are in the bubble of patriarchy. Now we have this very famous in Northeast, especially. I've come from Northeast India, by the way. We have series and series of seminars and conferences on women and peace, okay? Because we do have women who usher in peace in the severe conflict regions of the Northeast India. So not undermining their efforts. Of course, I mean, hats off to the women, hats off to Naga Mothers Association, hats off to the Mera Pairis of Manipur. I am not undermining their effort. But this whole concept of why? I mean, men should fight when women should bring peace. So there have been hundreds of seminars on women, but who says, why can't men bring peace, for God's sake, This nurturing quality imposed on women is nothing but a promulgation of patriarchal systems, Just a family mein jhagda hota hai, so women ka nahi jhagda mat karo, so women bring peace, So that is somehow extended to what you call public patriarchy, So I see in that manner. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that these are efforts within the patriarchal framework. Let's see the masculine notion of nationalism, and therefore does not direct towards structural change. Another patriarchal assumption is women is the enemy of the woman. Suna hai na bahut bari? Woman is the enemy of woman. Who decides? Who decides? And under what framework? And under what system? And definitely it's the patriarchal system which is dictating us that women are women's enemies. So who beat her? You know, many sociologists have built on nature culture debate to explain gender relations and gender stereotypes in a given society. Nature culture, mind, body being directly synonymous with man, woman, implying that nature, which is otherwise wild, needs to be controlled, subjugated. Mind and reason are superior to emotions and senses and divorced from one another. Man is mind and represent culture, the rational, unified thinking subject. Woman is body and represents nature, irrational, emotional, driven by instinct and physical need. Mind, culture, man must harness and control this potentially unruly body, nature, woman through the application of knowledge and willpower, creating a base for patriarchal hegemony. So we have come a long way when women's brains were actually considered small. You know that? Our brains were smaller. Hence, deficient in the sense of justice and reasoning ability required of all life beyond the care of husband and children. We always say the science is objective, but here we have scientific proofs in the 16th century and all where they said that women's brain is actually smaller. When it was believed that women naturally prefer to be protected by a powerful man, permitting women to enter public life would therefore be antithetical to human progress. The founder of French sociology, and I'm ashamed to say this today, Auguste Comte, echoed these sentiments because of their emotional and spiritual superiority. Women are perfectly fit for family and domesticity. It was in response to this, as well as the complex invisibility of political participation, that women scholars started responding and reacting. This was particularly so in the Western world, where women rose against the levels of gender inequalities, which gave rise to first, second, third, and of course, now we have the fourth wave of feminism. According to feminist scholar Prince Chamberlain, the fourth wave of feminists is seeking for justice for women and opposition to sexual harassment and violence against women. There are pioneers like, you know, in the introductory lectures, we can't help mentioning Simone de Beauvoir, you know, the author of Second Sex, but also Mary, Wollstonecraft. She is considered the grandmother of the British feminism, and her idea shaped actually the suffragettes. In 1918, Mary Stoppers, who believed in equality in marriage and importance of women's sexual desire, published Married Love, a sex manual. According to the Survey of American Academicians in 1935, was one of the 25 most influential books of the previous 50 years, ahead of Relativity by Albert Einstein and The Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud. So, you know, so these are the kind of accomplishments which are, you know, so the postmodern feminism do not believe in isms. They don't believe in isms. They don't believe in one single truth. Postmodern feminist theories do not assume that there's a complete coherent reality to which women's experience can be added. You know, Ritu was talking about cross-sectionality. That is where today's postmodernism feminists are talking about. They're talking about race and, you know, gender, caste and gender, class and gender, you know, and they are bringing a religion and gender. So they are bringing a lot of cross-sectionalities in there, and also gender, not just binaries, but then multiplicity of gender identities are coming up in the postmodern theories. So the feminist literature can perhaps be called the fastest growing research today. The epistemologies are incorporating wide variety of feminist discourses from extreme west to the indigenous to understanding the rights, what the Native American calls the two-spirited people. You know, in the Native Americans, the two-spirited people are the ones, you know, who have the souls of the male and the female. And incidentally, they are the revered, the sacred people in their society. So, you know, we have recently got the Supreme Court judgment where in the 377 has been repealed, and the they can be adult consensuous, it's been allowed, and the rainbow flags have flown all over. The first wave feminists fought for legal rights of the LGBT, another legal battle for equal rights have been won through this LGBTQ community. What we are witnessing today is the resurgence of return to our roots. the ancient traditions of understanding multiple sexualities, from the normative colonial heteropatriarchy to decolonized feminized thought processes. To cite one example before I end, is the study of Japanese youth. I don't know how many have read this book called Feminization of Masculinity by Yumiko Lida. In this, which he says is that in Japan, both men and women move away from their ascribed roles and into the counter-hegemonic practices, those challenge conventional masculine values. Yumiko's contention is that the increase in gender ambiguity is creating a conducive ethos and space for the feminist goal of transgender, of transgressing patriarchy. Among the Japanese young men, it is not the desire to look like women, but a rejection of the hegemonic masculine idea which is imposed on them. The Japanese women, according to the study, have moved from the 3H, high salary, high educational credentials, high physical status when they're asking for a partner. They moved to triple C's, which is comfortable, cooperative, and communicative in seeking their life partners. They are what Yumiko Lida explains, the feminization of masculinity, which is a logical outcome of feminization of culture in the postmodern cultural condition where human bodies are transferred into visual representational surfaces. Today, one can see more and more acceptance of the fact that there are multiple sexualities and they all need to have their dignified space. Social media and films are promoting ideas whereby one can see a masculine hero shedding tears and a feminine heroine as an expert sniper. But this breaking of binaries is happening in real world too. For example, there is a noticeable category of men who are nurses and their masculinity does not come in contradiction with their compassion and nurturing abilities. And then there are women combatants who are also exceptional mothers. A movie, Malevolent, the new version of Sleeping Beauty, where the so-called bad witch is actually the true love and she kisses the Sleeping Beauty and that's how the Sleeping Beauty comes out of slumber, long slumber. And it's not the prince, the prince is trying to save the damsel in distress. And there are people, who are coming out declaring their sexual identities and sexual preferences too. There is a trans woman in Manipur who is the first one in India to get T in her passport, not M or F, She's the first woman to get, trans woman to get it, Yeah. My ongoing research is also with an understanding that it is in the Southeast Asian ethos that feminine is diffused in all genders and in the backdrop of all cultures. This is my ongoing research, and it's still in a very nascent stage. But I do believe that, if you see Northeast India and Southeast Asia, you do find, the gender ambiguities and which needs to be highlighted, and it is in the indigenous religions, not in the mainstream Christianity or other religions. So today's seminar focuses on gender sensitization, right? You must be wondering, I've not even mentioned this subject till now. But how do we bring about it? How do we bring gender sensitization? Sensitization comes through acceptance, towards inclusivity, with an understanding that today gender identity is not slave to some fixed binaries, but can be through permutations of varied characteristics and personal choices. Feminization of masculinity is therefore a paradigm shift. That is what I promised in the beginning. I see this as a paradigm shift in the discourse on gender. It is a move towards a more sensitive humanity. Okay. Secondly, before I end, I would like to say that the policy initiatives, we're talking about gender sensitization and policy. The policy initiatives should start taking in women's voices. Our government is now aiming for not just women's inclusive development. We are moving towards women-led development. But for that, it is mandatory that we start picking up her stories, not rather his stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, for such an illuminating address. You have outlined the brief history of the feminism along with the structural violence against females, against women. And you have also talked about the paradigmatic shift, which is required to break away from the hierarchical violence and to proceed towards what Derrida may dub as free play. So our online guest, Dr. Ritu, would like to take our leave since she has to attend to her classes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being with us. Take care and have a nice day ahead. Now it's my privilege and pleasure to invite today's Professor Dr. Parvez Ahmed Kohl, Director, Sher-e-Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, for the special address.
Shri Rajiv Rai Bhatnagar ji, Honorable Advisor to the Honorable LG of the UT of J&K, Professor Qayyum Hussain, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Cluster University Kashmir. We had Professor Khanduri, who has just taken an exit, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara, the Professor of Sociology, Faculty, Royal Global University, Guwahati. Dr. Shabnam, Dr. Ruhi Jan Kant, Principal, Government College for Women, Maulana Azad College, faculties, deans, registrars, fellow students. First of all, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Qayyum and his team for having invited me to this symposium on gender sensitization, rights, policies, and issues. And incidentally, this is also my first time in this college, and that I have known as a crucible of women education and something that has been imparting women education for decades and decades, and has a place which is unparalleled in the educational sector of women education in Kashmir. Thank you for that, Dr. Qayyum. And I would also like to thank Dr. Khanduri and Dr. Vijay Lakshmi for having highlighted the issues that have actually been there for a long time and that need address. Talking about the anthropological ways to address the issues of gender sensitization and the blanket of feminism that has to be viewed with a different prism today. Dr. Vijay Lakshmi spoke about it in greater detail. Gender sensitization is one important goal that the SDG has put up, the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN by 2030. It's goal number 5, gender equality and women empowerment. I am not a social scientist. That is a disclaimer. I'm a commoner. I'm a garden variety of a medical doctor who also wears an additional hat of an administrator today. And my understanding of gender differences is that there is a difference in terms of our longevity. Women outlive men by at least 3 to 5 years in India. The disease profile of women is slightly different. However, once we talk about contributions of women to socio-cultural fields and even the scientific fields, they have never been left behind. They have never been away from the limelight, and Dr. Vijay Lakshmi spoke about innumerable examples of that. When women have outshone, not only participate, they have actually outshone the men, and they continue to do so even today. I know a woman as a daughter, as a sweet wife, and as a mother. Your first interaction in this world is with the mother. And that is the embodiment of your empathy, sympathy, everything else, and care. I'll take you to, I don't know how many of you know there is a book called Story from Day to Day. It used to be in our 9th class, along with another English book called Easy Prose. And in it was a compilation of stories. And in one of the stories was termed as the Enchanted Pool, which talks about Pandavas, led by Yudhishthira, who were wandering in the jungle and they were thirsty. So Yudhishthira sends his youngest brother, Nakula, and asks him to fetch him some water. He goes to a pool, and in the pool, he hears a voice. And the voice says, Nakula, you can't touch the water till you answer my questions. If you do not listen to my directions, you're going to lose your life. Nakula was thirsty. He did not listen to the voice. He put his mug in the water, tried to drink the water first. And the moment he had a sip, he was left lifeless and sank down dead. So next was the term of Sahadev, then Arjun, then Bhima, who were very powerful warriors. But each of them, one by one, went to this pool, drank water without regard to the direction given by this invisible voice, and they lost their lives and they were left lifeless. So Yudhishthira himself was the eldest and was in a hell of anxiety. He wanted to find out what is happening to his brothers. So he also went to look for water and his brothers. And he went to this enchanted pool and was startled to see his brothers dead. He went first in order to find out what has happened to his brothers. He first wanted to quench his thirst. As he started to drink the water, again the invisible voice came to him. Hey, Yudhishthira, please answer my questions. If you drink like your brothers have, you're going to lose your life. So Yudhishthira asks him, okay, what are your questions? He puts a volley of questions. And now is the point that I want to come to. And in one of the questions he asks him, who is more sustaining than earth? You know, on earth, you put any kind of filth, any kind of dirt, the earth never contradicts you, never tells you anything. And who is more sustaining than this earth that takes all of your abuses without even raising an eyebrow? And Yudhishthira told him, more sustaining than earth is the mother who brings up the child. And that is an immense tribute to a woman who is a mother, and she's eating her food, and suddenly the child urinates. Without regard to that, she keeps on imparting the care. So mother, daughter, an important fabric and component of the social fabric of us all. Woman is so important, and not only in the homes, but outside of the home, as Dr. Vijaya Lakshmi was pointing out. How much have they contributed significantly to the social upliftment, cultural upliftment, and also the scientific upliftment? A lot has changed, and a lot has to change. I've been an observer of this change myself. There was a time that not even boys were allowed out for studying. And today you see our daughters representing us in every single college in the country and abroad. So that has changed. Somebody said it's a paradigm shift. I would say it's a tectonic shift. It has so much has changed during my lifetime, and I'm sure it's going to continue. The change has got to be there. There are innumerable examples of women having shown or having leading, and there are so many examples Dr. Vijay Lakshmi spoke about. However, I want to put in a caveat. There are more women were more economically emancipated, more empowered women. But parallel to that, we have an increasing number of divorces. We have an increasing number of, a very high rate of divorces. Somebody said the woman is the enemy of the woman. I will not say that it is 100% true, but to a large extent, it may be true also, because one person that a daughter-in-law is most feared of, is scared of, is the mother-in-law. So that is where the change can be brought in at the individual level, which can slowly go to the community level and grow bigger. So I must say that this empowerment of women should be there, but has to be in parallel with maintaining the social fabric. We cannot let our social fabric just get disintegrated and only look at a single part of it, which is the women empowerment. I would suggest that we have a balance between an equitable empowerment of women and